What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Hope y'all have an amazing day as usual. So today we're going to be taking a look at the top 10 worst neighborhoods to live in New York. But before we get into today's video, make sure to click the like button, click the subscribe button, and always comment down below. It really helps out with the videos. So many Americans dream of living in New York, but fact is, living in New York really isn't a dream. It's more of a nightmare, to be completely honest. New York City is very crowded and you hardly get any space. Everything is overpriced, literally everything. The people are rude, and it's just not a good lifestyle. Plus, owning a car in New York City is a nightmare and is also very expensive. But some neighborhoods are better than others. However, there are still some New York neighborhoods that are not really that good to live in. And as we're going to see, some of these neighborhoods are gentrifying, but sadly that can also be a bad thing for many reasons. So, let's take a look at the top 10 worst neighborhoods in New York City. Number 10, Bedford-Stuyvesant. So Bedford-Stuyvesant, or BedStuy as most people call it, is a neighborhood located just about smack dab in the middle of Brooklyn. Now, if we made this video, say, 10 or 20 years ago, Bed-Stuy would probably be in the top 5 on this list, but things here have improved. A lot of gentrification is happening in this neighborhood, and homes are becoming very expensive, which a lot of the time is actually a bad thing because a lot of the locals are being pushed out into other areas, which is not really a good thing. So you have kind of this mix of gentrification and ghetto. It's still bad here. The crime here is far higher than most other parts of Brooklyn, and it has some of the most infamous housing projects in the city. The Tompkins houses are really bad, and of course the Marcy houses, which is where rapper Jay-Z grew up. Number 9, Jamaica. Jamaica's a neighborhood located smack dab in the middle of Queens. While there's other parts of New York City like Corona and Ozone Park and Richmond Hill that could use a little TLC, Jamaica takes the cake as the worst part of Queens. Jamaica is pretty bad, especially in South Jamaica. However, things here are kind of turning around. In fact, it's been gentrifying and lots of new buildings are being put in Jamaica. Now, what makes Jamaica's gentrification good is that the new buildings are not meant for rich people. It's meant for primarily low-income people, which is not really pushing any people out, so that's good. What's not good in Jamaica is the day-to-day lifestyle here. Jamaica High had to close due to the persistent violence that happened here. There's a lot of good shopping on Jamaica Avenue, but this area is also kind of weird. I mean, I've been down Jamaica Avenue, and everyone looks at you weird. Number 8, Mott Haven. So Mott Haven is a neighborhood located smack dab in the middle of the South Bronx, which is one of the worst parts of New York City you can live in. Now, in the 70s and 80s, Mott Haven, or the South Bronx in general, was one of the worst places you could live in the world. It was really bad. Things in the South Bronx, and Mott Haven in particular, have certainly improved, but it's still a horrible place to live in for many reasons. It's very crowded here, and a lot of the streets are dirty and filled with drugs, and people here aren't very friendly, and there's no real sense of community. There's a lot of housing projects in this neighborhood, and crime numbers and median incomes are just about the lowest in New York City. I've been to this neighborhood, or South Bronx, and really it's not horrible here. There's certainly worse parts of the Bronx, but this area still has a long way before it's considered a neighborhood you want to live in, and you probably don't. But things here are definitely improving from what they used to be in the 80s, so that's good. Number 7, Tompkinsville. So Tompkinsville is located in Staten Island. Now, if you're looking for somewhat of a safety and some affordability and somewhat of a decent house with some space, then Staten Island is probably your best bet. However, you would not want to live in Tompkinsville. This neighborhood is located in the eastern part of the city and is very dirty. The homes here are pretty run down and have no architectural features. It's certainly dirty here and doesn't look like Staten Island. Most parts of Staten Island are really nice, and it's probably the best borough to raise a family in, but Tompkinsville is certainly not that. In fact, there really isn't much positive to say. Number 6, East New York. We're back in Brooklyn. East New York is just about as far east in Brooklyn as you can go. And I've been to East New York, and really, it doesn't look that bad. Other than a little bit of trash and graffiti, it wasn't really horrible. There were maybe like one or two boarded up buildings, but it wasn't anything crazy. And I certainly wouldn't call it a ghetto, but the statistics say otherwise. East New York has some issues for sure. The median incomes in East New York are pretty much the lowest in Brooklyn, and crime here is very, very high. In fact, the kids here have to go through metal detectors at school to make sure that they don't have any knives or guns or whatnot, which is just terrible. A lot of the residential streets here are nice and kind of improving, and things here really are getting better. It's not a horrible neighborhood, or at least it doesn't look like it, but the stats say otherwise, and East New York certainly has some issues, no doubt about it. However, there are still worse places you could live in Brooklyn, and we're going to visit them in a minute. Number 5, Fordham. So Fordham is a neighborhood located in the West Bronx. Now, Fordham is home to Fordham School, which is a very good college, and the Bronx Zoo is nearby, but you really don't need to go to the Bronx Zoo since this neighborhood is already kind of a zoo. Fordham is one of the worst parts of New York City you can live in. Crime, trash, litter, graffiti, and overcrowding seems to be the norm in this neighborhood. If you like discount stores and check-cashing places, then I guess it'd be a good place to live, but other than that, it kind of sucks here. It's one of the cheapest neighborhoods you can live in New York City for a reason. You can be an unemployed joker and afford a house in Fordham. And also, not to mention, this neighborhood has a lot of homeless. But Fordham Road does have some really good shopping, so that's cool. Number 4, Tremont. So Tremont is another neighborhood located in the central part of the Bronx. In fact, I would consider it more the West Bronx, which we're going to see in a lot of this video. So I've been to Tremont, and I gotta say, it is a pretty bad area. Crime in Tremont is off the charts. There's always stories about a shooting or a robbery that happened in this neighborhood. The crimes and rival gangs are certainly an issue here. It's very dirty. There's a lot of boarded up windows and abandoned houses here, which is not good. They're not really trying to gentrify this area at all, and things really aren't improving in Tremont. It really is a horrible area. I'm sure there's some good people here, but it's not good here. Number 3, Claremont. So Claremont is a neighborhood located also in the West Bronx, and I've been to Claremont, and it is a pretty rough area. Now, I actually know someone who owned the business in Claremont, but anyways, crime here is pretty high. In fact, someone was actually getting robbed, or I can't remember. I think he got shot. I'm not sure. While holding his daughter's hand, and that happened in Claremont. There is the Claremont Park in the area, which is great if you want to barbecue or if you want to walk around, although the park can get pretty crowded. And the area around Webster Avenue is filled with abandoned buildings and graffiti. Now, there is a lot of auto body shops here, so that's really good. In the Claremont neighborhood, there's plenty of places where you can get your car fixed or get a new oil change or a car wash. In fact, I actually know someone who owns a auto body shop on Webster Avenue in this area. His store is called Freddie and Henry. Freddie and Henry is located at 650 Webster Avenue in the Bronx. And so that's kind of cool. So if you want to get your car detailed or oil changed, then that's probably the only reason why you should go to Claremont. I mean, I've been through this neighborhood, like I said, and it is pretty much the worst looking part of the Bronx. I just look at this place. Does it look nice? Not really. Looks pretty rough. Number 2, Brownsville. So Brownsville is located in central Brooklyn. In fact, this whole part of central Brooklyn is not really that good. Now, Brownsville definitely is the worst part of Brooklyn. Now, things here really haven't improved. In fact, it is the most dangerous neighborhood in New York City when it comes to crime. This is one of the only neighborhoods in Brooklyn that hasn't received any gentrification. Gentrification will happen one day, and if it does, they'll probably just push the poor folks into the Bronx or outside of New York City in general. Now, Brownsville certainly has some crime issues and some other stats, but What really makes this neighborhood so bad is the amount of housing projects. Seriously, the housing projects here are bad. There's a lot of housing projects here, like the Brownsville houses, the Tilden houses, and of course, the Van Dyke homes. All these housing projects are filled with trash and gangs, and the scent of weed and pee is around the hallways. Some of the housing projects in this neighborhood even have, like, those police towers, which is just horrible. And that should not be happening in what is America's greatest city. You do not want to live in Brownsville. On a positive note, there are some nice people in Brownsville and some good people that want to help out, I bet, but there's way better areas. And number 1, Hunts Point. So the worst neighborhood in New York City is Hunts Point. This neighborhood is located just about as far south in the Bronx as you can go. Now, this neighborhood only has 12,000 people, so it's not very big, but I bet the 12,000 people that live here are really, really unlucky because this is the worst neighborhood you can live in New York City. I've been to Hunts Point. It's extremely run down. It's mostly industrial. It's filled with trash and graffiti and honestly looks like New York City in the 80s. I mean, this area hasn't even been touched with any gentrification efforts. This area looks like everyone has just given up hope. In fact, my mom went to the NYU film school in the 90s, and she went down to, like, record, like, movies and pictures of this area in the 90s, and she said there were pimps, hookers, really just the worst things that can be happening in New York City happen in Hunts Point. This is just a terrible, terrible neighborhood. I mean, just look at this place. This should not be happening in New York City. So anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. I really, really hope you guys enjoyed. Now, New York City is kind of a great city, but as we're seeing by this video, there are some really bad parts of New York City. Now, of course, compared to other big cities, New York City's hoods really aren't that bad, especially when you compare them to cities like Baltimore, Detroit, or Chicago, or nearby Philly, but still, New York City has plenty of issues that they certainly need to resolve, and hopefully it happens soon. So that's going to be it for today's video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and God bless to all you guys.